I'm 35, male, and work as a software engineer in a mid-sized company. I wouldn't call myself the most exciting person, but I've worked hard to build a stable life. I own a modest house in a quiet suburb. I'm a decent cook, and my friends often say I'm the kind of guy who listens more than he talks. My wife, 33, works in corporate sales at a large firm. We met 10 years ago, fell in love quickly, and got married 2 years later. Our relationship had its ups and downs like any other, but I thought we were solid. At least, I didn't until a few months ago. It all started with little changes. My wife became distant. She'd come home late, claim she had work dinners, and spend more time glued to her phone than talking to me. I tried to be understanding. After all, I knew her job was demanding, and she'd been gunning for a promotion for months. She said if she landed it, it would mean a bigger paycheck and fewer late nights, something we both wanted. But things didn't add up. One night, she came home unusually late, stumbling through the door with flushed cheeks and the faint smell of whiskey clinging to her. When I asked if she'd been drinking with colleagues, she got defensive. "Why are you interrogating me? It was just a harmless dinner," she snapped. Her reaction felt out of proportion, but I let it go. Maybe I was reading too much into things. The tipping point came when I found her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. Normally, I wouldn't touch it, but the name flashing on the screen caught my attention. Her boss. My gut twisted. Why was he texting her at midnight? Against my better judgment, I unlocked her phone. The texts were explicit. My hands shook as I scrolled through weeks of messages. They had been sleeping together. The truth hit me like a truck. My wife had slept with her boss to secure her promotion. I confronted her that night. She didn't deny it. Instead, she tried to justify it. "It wasn't like that," she argued, her voice dripping with entitlement. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. Everyone at work was gunning for that position. I needed an edge." She spoke as if her betrayal was a necessary evil, something I should understand and forgive. I didn't. The following weeks were a blur of arguments and tears. She begged me not to tell anyone. "If this gets out, I'll lose everything," she said, clutching my arm like her life depended on it. Part of me wanted to believe she was remorseful, but her actions said otherwise. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. While she was busy trying to salvage her career, I was quietly taking steps to protect myself. I spoke to a divorce lawyer, who advised me to gather evidence and start documenting everything. I learned that in our state, infidelity could have an impact on spousal support claims, especially if I could prove it. I began building my case. Things took an unexpected turn 2 months later. My wife didn't get the promotion. Apparently, her boss had strung her along with promises, but ultimately gave the position to someone else. To add insult to injury, rumors about their relationship had started circulating at her workplace. She was fired for violating company policy. She came home that day looking like a ghost. "I lost my job," she whispered, sinking onto the couch. I didn't respond. She looked at me, her eyes wide with desperation. "I need you to support me through this." Support her? After everything she'd done? I wanted to laugh at the audacity, but I kept my composure. "You made your bed. Now lie in it," I said, standing up and walking out of the room. Over the next few weeks, she tried everything to win me back. She cooked elaborate dinners, left handwritten notes apologizing for her mistakes, and even suggested we go to marriage counseling. But her apologies felt hollow. She wasn't trying to fix our relationship. She was trying to cling to the life she was losing. The final straw came when I discovered she had been telling her family and friends a twisted version of events. According to her, I was the villain, cold, unsupportive, and unwilling to forgive her for a minor lapse in judgment. She painted herself as the victim, conveniently leaving out the part where she slept with her boss for personal gain. That was it. I filed for divorce the next day. The divorce process wasn't as simple as filing papers and walking away. My lawyer advised me to present a solid case to protect my assets and avoid being dragged into a lengthy battle. I had all the evidence. Screenshots of the texts, bank statements showing unexplained expenses, hotel rooms, dinners, you name it, and even a timeline that matched her late nights with her boss's text messages. When my wife was served the divorce papers, she was furious. She stormed into the house screaming about how I was overreacting and throwing away our marriage. She demanded we sit down and talk like adults. I told her there was nothing left to talk about. That's when her true colors showed. If you go through with this, she spat, I'll take everything. Half the house, your savings, the car, everything. You'll regret this. She looked at me like she had already won, like I would cave under her threats. I didn't. Instead, I calmly informed her that I had already spoken to my lawyer, who assured me that her infidelity would work against her in court. Her expression shifted instantly, from anger to fear. You wouldn't, she whispered, but I could tell she knew I would. That's when the manipulation started. She tried every dirty trick in the book to make me back down. One day, I got a call from my boss. Apparently, someone had sent an anonymous email claiming I was stealing company funds. The accusations were baseless, of course, but it caused enough of a stir that I had to sit through an internal review. I knew it was her. No one else had a motive to try and ruin my career. When I confronted her, she played dumb. Why would I do something like that, she said, feigning innocence. You're just being paranoid. But her schemes didn't stop there. A few days later, she showed up at my workplace unannounced, crying and begging me to take her back. She caused such a scene in the lobby that security had to escort her out. My coworkers were confused, but I knew it was another one of her tactics. She wanted to embarrass me, to paint herself as the heartbroken wife, trying to save her marriage while I looked like the cold, unfeeling husband. I refused to engage. Instead, I focused on building my case. My lawyer filed a motion to include the evidence of her infidelity in the divorce proceedings. Since we didn't have kids, the case was primarily about dividing assets, and I was determined not to let her walk away with a dime more than she deserved. The court date finally arrived, and my wife's entitlement was on full display. She tried to argue that her affair was a moment of weakness and that she deserved half of everything because she had supported me throughout our marriage. But the evidence spoke for itself. When the judge reviewed the texts, the hotel receipts, and the timeline I had painstakingly put together, it was clear who had broken the trust in our marriage. Her lawyer tried to argue that the affair wasn't relevant to the division of assets, but the judge disagreed. In our state, fault-based divorces could impact alimony, and her infidelity was a clear breach of the marital contract. The final judgment was a blow to her. She got no spousal support, minimal assets, and was ordered to pay a portion of my legal fees. The look on her face when the judge read the decision was priceless. For once, she couldn't manipulate her way out of the consequences. She tried to confront me outside the courthouse, screaming about how I had ruined her life. I didn't respond. I simply walked away. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, I found out that she had been blacklisted from several companies in her industry. Word of her affair with her boss and the subsequent fallout had spread, making her virtually unemployable. She ended up moving back in with her parents, who, from what I heard, weren't exactly thrilled about the situation. As for me, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The divorce was messy, painful, and exhausting, but it was also liberating. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or wonder what new scheme my wife was cooking up. I was free. Looking back, I realized that her entitlement wasn't just about the affair or the promotion. It was a pattern of behavior that had been there all along. She thought she could manipulate, lie, and cheat her way through life without facing any consequences. But in the end, her actions caught up with her. So yeah, I got my revenge, not out of spite, but because she needed to understand that actions have consequences. And let me tell you, there's nothing more satisfying than watching someone who tried to destroy you realize they've destroyed themselves instead. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to stick around. Who knows, you might just find more tales of karmic justice that hit the spot.